They fired the nanny. They forgot she had proof. Part 2. The fallout and the folders. Before we continue, you need to remember where we left her. Because it matters. It matters exactly. Picture this again. A backyard in late June. String lights. White linen. 40 guests with champagne. The kind of afternoon that looks, from the outside, like everything is fine. Like everything has always been fine. And in the center of that garden, near the back fence, catching the afternoon light, an activity station. Wooden frame painted in soft primary colors. Textured panels hung at exactly the right height. A sensory bin. A puzzle board. A mirror in a felt frame. Every single element of it chosen deliberately, sourced carefully, assembled by hand, set up at 6:30 in the morning by a woman who arrived before anyone else was awake because that is the kind of professional she is. That woman is Adaeze Okonkwo. She is not standing beside her work accepting compliments. She is 30 feet away, in an apron she did not bring, holding a silver tray. The photographer finds the station. He crouches. He takes his shots. He stands. He looks around for someone to credit, the natural thing, the automatic thing, and Claudia Whitfield materializes at his elbow with a champagne flute and a practiced smile. Who put this together? And Claudia says, without hesitation, without a flicker, oh, the planner handled it. The camera flashes. Adaeze is standing 6 feet away. She hears every word. She does not react. She turns. She moves toward a guest with an empty glass and an outstretched hand, and the woman, not cruel, just absent, the particular absence of someone who has never once considered what you might be, gestures toward the house and says, "Kitchen's through there." And Adaeze takes the glass. And she walks toward the kitchen. And she does not look at the activity station. Because she cannot. Not right then. 4 days later, she finds the review online. Posted without warning. Without any prior complaint ever being raised with her. Without a single conversation. Difficulty maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. Overstepped in ways that required redirection. And at the end, that final line, smooth and pleasant and devastating in the specific way that polite cruelty always is. A lovely person, but not quite what we needed. And Adaeze sits in a stop-and-shop parking lot at 7:14 on a Tuesday evening with the Whitfield family's groceries in the backseat, and she reads that line out loud once. Quietly, just to hear what it sounds like in the actual air. And then she opens her spiral notebook and she writes the date and she writes, Tuesday grocery run, not in contract. Not because she has a plan. Just because she writes things down. Just because she has always, her whole life, written things down. That's where we left her. Sitting in the dark. Engine running. Going nowhere yet. And that's where everything changed. Before we get into this unbelievable story, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're tuning in from. It's amazing to see how far our Curious Chronicles family reaches. If you love heart-stopping or inspiring stories that make you feel everything, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We share epic, can't look away tales every week. Let's jump in. The week after the review, Adaeze went back to work. This is important. She went back. She got up on Monday morning at 6:15, she made her coffee. She drove to the Whitfield house. She parked in the same spot she always parked in. And she went inside and she went upstairs and she spent the day doing her job. Because the review had not been discussed. Claudia had not mentioned it. Adaeze had not mentioned it. And in the absence of any direct confrontation, Adaeze defaulted to the thing she always defaulted to, professionalism. Continuation. The job exists. The child needs care. I am here to provide it. Everything else is noise. This is one of her strengths. It is also, as we established at the beginning of this story, her flaw. She absorbs. She continues. She tells herself that the dignified response to an indignity is to keep working. What she could not have known, what no one tells you when you are in the middle of it, is that sometimes continuing is exactly what the other person is counting on. Claudia had not mentioned the review because she did not plan to. There was nothing to discuss, from her perspective. She had said what she felt, behind the comfortable distance of a screen name and a verified employer account, and she had moved on. That was the end of it, as far as she was concerned. Adaeze would absorb it, the way she absorbed everything, and eventually the situation would resolve itself. The situation resolved itself 3 weeks later. It was a Thursday in mid-July. Adaeze arrived at 7:30 as usual. The house was quieter than normal. Claudia was home, which was not unusual, but there was a particular quality to the quiet that Adaeze registered without naming. The kind of quiet that precedes something. She went upstairs. She spent the morning with Chloe. Tummy time, then a language activity, then a walk around the garden in the stroller. The day's schedule, as always, deliberately structured to support Chloe's developmental needs. At 11:15, Claudia appeared in the doorway of the infant room. "Can you come downstairs when you get a chance?" she said. Her voice was pleasant. Level. The voice of someone who has decided in advance how a conversation is going to go and has already emotionally completed it. Adaeze put Chloe in the bouncer seat. She followed Claudia downstairs. They sat in the living room. The same living room where the interview had taken place 14 months ago, with its eucalyptus scent and its perfect quiet and its furniture arranged like a statement of intent. Claudia sat across from her with her hands folded. "We've decided to go in a different direction with childcare," she said. "We've found someone who's going to be a better fit for where Chloe is now developmentally. She starts on Monday." Adaeze looked at her. "I want you to know we think you've done a wonderful job," Claudia continued, in the same level tone. "This isn't a reflection of your capabilities. We just feel like Chloe's needs have shifted and we want to be responsive to that." Adaeze said, "My contract requires 4 weeks' notice for termination without cause." A small pause. "We're offering 1 week severance," Claudia said. "Paid through the end of this week, plus next week. We think that's a fair transition." "The contract specifies 4 weeks," Adaeze said again. "Not raised. Not emotional. Just precise." "We appreciate that," Claudia said. "But given the circumstances, we think 1 week is appropriate." Given the circumstances. She did not elaborate on what the circumstances were. Adaeze sat very still for a moment. Then she said, "I'd like to say goodbye to Chloe before I go." Claudia's expression shifted. Just slightly. Something in it closing off. "I think it's better if we keep the transition clean," she said. "For Chloe's sake. Drawn-out goodbyes can be hard on young children." Adaeze was a specialist in early childhood development. She knew, with precise academic and practical certainty, that a 1-year-old would not be harmed by a goodbye from a caregiver she had known her entire life. The harm, in fact, ran in the opposite direction. Abrupt loss of attachment figures was a documented developmental stressor. She knew this. Claudia knew she knew this. Neither of them said any of it out loud. "I'll get my things," Adaeze said. She went upstairs. She collected her bag, which was always packed with her essentials, because she was organized, because she was always organized. She stood in the doorway of the infant room. Chloe was in the bouncer. She was looking at the mobile, the black and white contrast mobile that Adaeze had hung there in week 1, the one she had replaced twice as Chloe's visual development progressed and her needs changed. Chloe's hands were moving in the specific way they moved when she was content, open and closing slowly, a self-soothing rhythm she had developed around 4 months old and that Adaeze had noted in the log as self-regulation behavior emerging, positive sign. Adaeze stood there for 10 seconds. Then she turned and went downstairs and walked out the front door. It closed behind her with a soft, definitive click. She sat in her car in the driveway for a moment. She did not go back in. She started the engine. She pulled out. She drove 3 blocks. Then she pulled over. She sat with her hands on the wheel and she let herself feel it, the specific, full weight of it, all of it at once, The party and the review and the apron and the groceries and the kitchens through there and the not quite what we needed and the better for Chloe's sake. She let it land, all of it, and she sat with it for a while. Then she wiped her face with the back of her hand. She started the car again. She drove home. By Friday, she knew her name. Not because anyone told her. Because the Whitfield family's social media was public. Claudia kept a carefully curated Instagram, the kind that performed authenticity without actually providing it, and by Friday evening, there was a photograph. A young woman, mid-20s, fair-skinned and blonde, sitting on the living room floor with Chloe. The caption read, "New adventures with our little one and her wonderful new companion. So grateful for the right fit." The right fit. The activity station was visible in the background of the photograph. In the corner of the frame, just barely. Adaeze recognized the foil panel, catching the light, the way it always caught the light. She put her phone down. She did not look at it again that evening. Here is something that most people don't fully understand about reputation damage in a small professional community. It doesn't require a campaign. It doesn't require Claudia picking up a phone and making calls. It doesn't require deliberate sabotage. It just requires the review to exist, and for the community to be small enough that the review carries weight, and for the people in that community to be risk-averse enough that they choose the path of least resistance. Fairfield County, Connecticut, is not a large place. The premium childcare market in Fairfield County is smaller still. The families who use placement agencies, who pay specialist rates, who seek credentialed professionals rather than general nannies, they know each other. They see each other at the same events. Their children attend the same programs. Their names appear in the same social threads. The review was not a private complaint. It was a public record on a verified professional platform. Any family searching Adaeze's name, which is how you vet candidates, which is what any careful parent would do, would find it immediately, positioned directly below her professional profile. Difficulty maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. Within 10 days of her termination, two things happened. The Harrington family, a couple in Westport who had contacted the placement agency about Adaeze specifically, based on a referral from a former colleague, sent a brief email through the agency. "We've decided to go with another candidate. Thank you for your time." No explanation. No specific feedback. Just another candidate. The second thing was worse, in its way. A woman named Patricia Bloom, a child development consultant Adaeze had known professionally for 4 years, someone who had referred clients to her, someone she had considered a genuine colleague, called her. "I just want to give you a heads up," Patricia said, in the careful tone of someone delivering news they would prefer not to deliver. "I've had 2 families ask me about you this week. I told them you were excellent. But the review is, it's out there. People are seeing it." "I know," Adaeze said. A pause. "Adaeze, do you know what they're referring to? The boundary issues." The question was asked gently. It was asked in good faith. Patricia was not being unkind. She was asking because she wanted to understand, because she wanted to be able to defend Adaeze accurately if she was asked again. But the question still landed the way it landed. Because the question itself contained an assumption. The assumption that where there is smoke, there is fire. That a formal complaint, even an unjust one, must have some root in something real. That perhaps Adaeze did something. Perhaps there is a version of this where the employer has a point. "No," Adaeze said. "I don't. Because it wasn't raised with me. Not once. Not in 14 months." Another pause. "I believe you," Patricia said. She said it kindly. She said it like she meant it. But 2 weeks later, when Adaeze called her about a potential referral, Patricia didn't call back for 4 days. And when she did, she said she'd already recommended someone else. She was sure Adaeze understood. Adaeze understood. This is the part of the story that is hardest to talk about. Not the party. Not the review. Not the termination. Those are events. Those have clear edges. You can look at them and say, that happened. That was wrong. That was done to me. This part has no clear edges. It happened slowly, in the quiet of her apartment, in the weeks after the Harringtons pull out and Patricia stops returning calls quickly and the agency sends fewer inquiries and the calendar that used to fill with work starts to have open days in it, and then more open days, and then a week where nothing comes in at all. It happens when you are sitting with your own thoughts for too long, and your own thoughts start to work against you. Adaeze knew, factually, intellectually, with complete certainty, that the review was dishonest. She knew that she had never been told she overstepped. She knew about the emails. She knew about the grocery runs and Barbara and the contractor and the 22 progress reports that went unacknowledged. She knew what the contract said. She knew all of this. And still, in the quiet, the doubt found its way in. What if there was something I missed? What if there were signals I didn't read? What if Claudia felt something she never expressed and I should have noticed? What if I misread the relationship, thought we had more mutual respect than we did, and that misreading was itself a kind of overstepping? This is what injustice does when it goes unconfronted. It doesn't just damage your reputation in the world. It damages your access to your own truth. You start editing your own memory. You start inserting asterisks into things you know happened. You start softening the edges of what was done to you, because softening it is easier than carrying it at full weight. And because you have been told, implicitly, consistently, by every structure you have ever moved through, that the most professional, the most dignified, the most appropriate thing you can do is absorb and move forward. Her sister called from Lagos on a Sunday evening. "Why don't you just find something different?" her sister said, not unkindly, genuinely trying to help. "You could go back to a center. You don't need to be in private homes." "This is my field," Adaeze said. "I know. But if one family has made it difficult..." "It's not one family," Adaeze said. "The review is, it follows me. It's attached to my name." Her sister was quiet for a moment. "Maybe just for now," she said. "Just while things settle." After the call, Adaeze sat in her kitchen for a long time. Just while things settle. As though she had caused the disturbance. As though the weather had simply turned and she needed to wait it out. As though the review had appeared by natural phenomenon rather than by the deliberate, calculated decision of a woman who had access to a platform and understood that a single well-placed sentence could do work that an argument never could. She sat there. And for the first time, she thought, maybe they're right. Maybe moving on is all there is. At the end of July, with 2 client inquiries still unanswered and her savings beginning to feel their edges, Adaeze filed for unemployment benefits. She sat in a grey plastic chair in the Connecticut Department of Labor waiting room on a Wednesday morning. The room smelled of industrial cleaner and recycled air. A television mounted high on the wall played a morning talk show with the captions on and the sound off. Around her, people waited. Most of them were not looking at each other. Most of them were looking at their phones, or at the floor, or at the number dispensing machine near the door with the particular focus of someone who needs something very specific to happen and cannot make it happen any faster by staring at it. Adaeze sat with her bag on her lap. She had brought her contract. She brought it because the intake form asked for employment documentation, and she had it, and she was thorough. She sat with it in her lap for a while. And then, because she was waiting and there was nothing else to do, she opened it and read it again. She had read it dozens of times. She knew it. But there is something different about reading a document in a fluorescent waiting room when you have just been told, in effect, that you are not owed what it says you are owed. Something becomes very clear. The words become very specific. She read the scope clause. She read the severance provision. She read the scope expansion clause. Any duties requested outside the defined scope of this role must be agreed to in writing and will be compensated at the specialist rate specified in Appendix B. She turned to Appendix B. She had not looked at Appendix B in several months. The specialist rate for out-of-scope work was listed clearly, $42 per hour, time and a half for any such work exceeding 5 hours in a single week. She sat with that number for a moment. She thought about the grocery runs. The meal prep, the contractor management, Barbara, the pediatric appointment scheduling, the party. She did not have a calculator. She had a phone. She opened it. She did not start calculating. Not yet. But she looked at the number, $42, and she looked at the contract in her hands, and she felt something shift, very slightly, in the way she was holding herself in the chair. Her number was called. She stood up. She went to the window. She filed her claim. She drove home. She put the contract on the kitchen table, and she looked at it for a long time before she went to make dinner. It was a Saturday night in early August when she decided to do it properly. She did not make a dramatic decision. There was no moment of resolution, no fist on the table, no sudden fire. There was just a quiet evening, a cleared kitchen table, and the accumulated weight of several weeks of being told, by the market, by the silence of colleagues, by the dwindling inquiries, by her own creeping doubt, that she should move on. That there was nothing to be done. That this was simply what had happened to her, and the appropriate response was to absorb it and continue. She was tired of absorbing. She got up from the couch at 9:30 p.m. She made herself a cup of tea. She went to her bedroom closet and she retrieved the accordion file where she kept her professional documents. She brought it to the kitchen table. She sat down. She opened it. She started with the contract. She placed it on the left side of the table and she read it in full, slowly, with a yellow highlighter she found in the kitchen drawer. She highlighted the scope clause. She highlighted the expansion clause. She highlighted the severance provision, 4 weeks written notice required for termination without cause, or equivalent severance in lieu of notice. She had received 1 week. She had been owed 4. She set the contract aside. She kept going. The emails. She had not gone looking for them. But she was thorough. She had always been thorough. And she had kept her work email organized in labeled folders since the day she started. She opened her laptop. She went to the folder labeled Whitfield. She started at the beginning and she read forward. The first out-of-scope request was in month 2. An email from Claudia. Adaeze, quick favor. The grocery delivery won't make it today. Could you stop by Whole Foods on your way in tomorrow? I'll Venmo you. Casual. Friendly. A favor. She had responded, of course, no problem. And then she had gone to Whole Foods. And Claudia had Venmoed her the grocery amount, though not an hour of her specialist time, because it was framed as a favor, and you don't bill people for favors. She kept reading. The requests accumulated in the inbox with the steady patience of things that have been waiting to be counted. Grocery runs, 11 separate emails across 14 months, each one casual. Each one framed as a one-time need, each one documented with a date and a time and Adaeze's agreeable response. Meal preparation, 7 emails. Can you throw the chicken in the oven around 4? I have a late call. There's soup in the fridge. Could you heat it for Richard's lunch? The recipe is on the counter. It's super simple, just the pasta. Contractor management, 4 email threads, each one multi-message, each one involving Adaeze scheduling appointments, relaying information, receiving deliveries, and corresponding on the Whitfield's behalf with a contractor named Dave who was renovating the mudroom and who, over the course of those 4 threads, had clearly come to regard Adaeze as his primary point of contact. Barbara, 9 separate communications. Mom's coming Thursday. She'll need a bit of extra help. Mom can't manage the stairs on her own today. Can you stay an extra hour tonight? Mom needs company. Each one a request. Each one phrased as temporary. 9 of them over 3 months. Pediatric appointments, 6 emails. Scheduling. Rescheduling. Prescription follow-up calls made on Claudia's behalf. The party setup, 1 email, sent 3 weeks before the birthday, with a subject line that read activity station idea and a body that said, Adaeze, I'd love for you to design something really special for the party. I know you have amazing ideas. Can you handle it? Can you handle it? She sat back. She had been sitting forward without realizing it, her face close to the screen, her tea going cold beside her. She counted the emails. She counted them again. 47 emails. 47 documented, written, time-stamped requests for work that was explicitly outside the scope of her contract. 47 instances of labor performed without the written agreement the contract required, without the specialist rate compensation the contract specified, without any acknowledgement from either party that the scope of her role had expanded in any way. 47. She sat with that number. She went and got the spiral notebook from her bag. She brought it back to the table. She opened it to the first entry, month 2, week 3, grocery run, stop and shop, approximate. 45 minutes including drive time. Not in contract. She turned the page. And the next page. And the next. 14 months of Tuesdays and Wednesday afternoons and Barbara's bathroom and the contractor named Dave and the party morning and the drive home with the groceries shifting in the back seat. All of it written down in her small, careful handwriting. All of it dated. All of it cross-referenced, without her ever intending to cross-reference anything, with the email record she had just spent 2 hours reading. The email said, this was requested of her. The notebook said, this was done by her. The contract said, this was never agreed to, and if it had been, it would have been compensated differently. Richard's performance email said, this was done exceptionally. She laid the notebook open on the table next to the printed emails. She had started printing them, working through the paper tray of the small printer on her desk, page after page, organized by category, and she looked at the two documents side by side. The emails matched the notebook entries. Date for date. Task for task. The written requests corresponded to the written records of completion. There were no gaps. There were no inconsistencies. She had been documenting her own case without knowing she was documenting her own case for 14 months, with a methodical, unconscious thoroughness of someone who simply could not help keeping good records. She stood up. She went to the printer. She got more paper. She kept going. She found Richard's email in her inbox at 11:47 p.m. She had known it was there. She had saved it months ago, in a separate folder. The way you save something you know is important without knowing yet exactly why. But finding it now, in context, with 47 out-of-scope requests printed and organized on the table around her, it read differently. We want to note our appreciation for the quality of Adaeze's work with Chloe. Her expertise and dedication have been exceptional, and we are grateful she is part of our family. Sent 6 weeks before the birthday party. 6 weeks before the review appeared. Exceptional. And then, difficulty maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. A gap of 6 weeks between those two assessments. No conversation. No complaint. No performance review. No documentation of any concern whatsoever. Just, exceptional. And then, overstepped. She printed the email. She placed it on the table. She looked at the collection of documents spread before her, the contract, the highlighted clauses, the 47 printed emails organized into labeled stacks, the spiral notebook, the performance commendation, and she felt something settle in her chest. Not anger. Not triumph. Just a very specific, very quiet clarity. The clarity that comes from having evidence. She was not a lawyer. She didn't know exactly what any of this meant yet in legal terms. She didn't know what was actionable and what wasn't, what would hold up and what wouldn't, what a case like this looked like or how it was built or whether it was worth attempting. She knew none of that. But she knew what she had. She had the truth of what happened, laid out in primary documents, sourced from the people who had caused it, in their own words and timestamps and email addresses, corroborated by her own records, spanning 14 months. She had the truth, and the truth was documented. And then she found the email she hadn't been looking for. She almost missed it. She was going through a folder of email threads from month 12, the final 2 months of her employment, when the out-of-scope assignments were at their most frequent and the professional acknowledgement was at its most absent. And she was looking for a specific thread about a pediatric appointment in June when she saw a forwarded message. The subject line was a chain of forward, tags that had accumulated across multiple forwards, the kind of email that gets passed between inboxes without anyone thinking carefully about who is copied. The original message was between Claudia and Richard. The chain had been forwarded to a friend of Claudia's for reasons that were not entirely clear. And somewhere in the forwarding chain, Claudia had copied Adaeze by mistake. It happened. It happened to everyone eventually. You forward something quickly. Your phone autofills an email address. You don't check. You send. Adaeze was in the CC field of an email that was never meant for her. She opened the thread. She read up from the bottom, the way you read email chains, from the original message forward. The original message was Richard, writing to Claudia after what appeared to be a discussion about the termination. Are you sure about the timing? 1 week severance seems like it could be a problem given the contract language. Claudia's response, Richard, I've thought about it. She won't make a fuss. She never makes a fuss about anything. Richard, I still think we should offer 2 weeks at minimum. Claudia's final message in the chain, sent the morning of the termination. It's fine. Trust me. She won't fight it. And then, in a second message sent 4 minutes later, clearly as an afterthought, clearly not intended as part of any formal discussion, just a thought, send the way you send a thought when you're confident and comfortable and have never once had to question whether you would be held accountable for anything. These people never do. These people never do. Adaeze read it. She read it again. She set the paper down on the table. The kitchen was very quiet. The clock on the microwave said 12:23 a.m. The folders were arranged around her in a half circle. The contract, the emails, the notebook, the performance note, the review she had printed from the platform, and now this. A forwarded chain that was never supposed to reach her, carrying a sentence that told her everything she needed to know about how she had been perceived, and what had been assumed about her, and what had been counted on. She won't fight it. These people never do. She said it out loud. Once. Quietly. To herself, to the kitchen, to the documents spread across the table. Just to hear what it sounded like in the actual air. She sat with it for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone. She typed into the search bar, Employment Attorney Connecticut, Wage Theft Contract Violation. She clicked the first result. She read the page carefully, the way she read everything, slowly, fully, without skipping. Then she opened a new email. She typed, Good evening. My name is Adaeze Okonkwo. I am a certified early childhood development specialist and I was recently terminated from a 14-month engagement in Fairfield County, Connecticut, in what I believe constitutes a breach of my employment contract. I have documentation. I would like to discuss whether I have a viable case. She looked at what she had written. She looked at the folders. She looked at the email she had printed, These people never do, sitting in the center of the table. She hit send. She did not sleep that night. Not really. She lay in bed in the dark and stared at the ceiling, and she thought about Chloe reaching for the foil panel. She thought about kitchens through there. She thought about the informational cards taken off the display and set aside on the kitchen counter. Gently, without commentary, I don't want it to feel like a lecture. She thought about the apron she hadn't brought. She thought about Barbara and the grocery bags and the contractor named Dave and 22 progress reports going unanswered. She thought about sitting in the Stop and Shop parking lot. She thought, she counted on me not fighting. She thought, she counted on exactly the right thing, for exactly the wrong reason. Because Adaeze was not a person who made noise. She was not a person who sent angry emails or left competing reviews or called former colleagues to tell her side of things. She was not that person. She had never been that person. But she was a person who wrote things down. She had always been a person who wrote things down. And now, on a kitchen table in a small apartment in Bridgeport, Connecticut, those two facts, her silence and her precision, had collided into something that Claudia Whitfield had not calculated for. Something Claudia Whitfield, for all her social fluency and narrative control and expertise in managing what other people assumed, had not seen coming. Not a scene. Not a confrontation. Not noise. 7 manila folders. 47 emails. 14 months of a spiral notebook. And one forwarded message that was never supposed to arrive. These people never do. Adaeze stared at the ceiling. She had the proof. She had all of it. Now she was going to use it. Part 3. The Reckoning, coming next. The decision has been made. Part 3 is the reckoning. I'll see you at the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't click away just yet. Our next underdog journey is waiting, and it might surprise you even more. Explore the channel and continue the experience. One story leads to another, and each one proves that being underestimated is often the beginning of something powerful. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.